There have been some interesting developments in the Russia-Ukraine war over the past couple of weeks, as Russia has redoubled its efforts to capture portions of eastern and southeastern Ukraine following its failed effort to capture the Ukrainian capital of Kyiv in the early days of the conflict. Meanwhile, Russia a couple of days ago sent a formal diplomatic note to the United States State Department warning that continued US and NATO efforts to arm Ukraine were adding fuel to the conflict and would bring unpredictable consequences. Throughout the conflict, the United States and its NATO allies have sent billions of dollars in military aid to Ukraine, the content of which has ranged from Soviet-era equipment to advanced military drones, anti-aircraft and anti-tank missile systems, howitzers, and a wide variety of other items. But will Russia's warning change U.S. behavior, or will Western assistance to Ukraine bring an end to Russia's military operations there? Hey everyone, I'm Noah Zerbe. I'm a professor of global politics at California State Polytechnic University Humboldt. In this video series, I try to explain the concepts and theories behind current events, generally in 2 minutes or less. The international relations literature on negotiation, escalation, and conflict resolution tends to focus on the credibility of commitments by states to a particular course of action. By credibility, which we sometimes call power credibility, we're essentially asking how likely a state is to follow through on its threats or promises. A country with relatively low credibility is perceived by other states as being less likely to follow through on its threats or promises, while a state with a high credibility is perceived as being more likely to follow through on its commitments. Credibility can be derived from a number of factors. Reputation and historical behavior obviously play an important role. In general, a state that has been consistent or has behaved consistently over time will be perceived as being likely to continue to behave in a similar way into the future, while states that have been unpredictable or inconsistent will often be viewed as being less credible in their future commitments. States may often try to signal their intentions to one another, taking actions to show their commitment or even sometimes locking themselves into a particular course of action. These are sometimes referred to as commitment devices, and they can be a powerful way for a state to signal its intentions to other states, thereby increasing the credibility or its credibility in a particular issue area. One particular form of signaling centers on audience costs, or the domestic political costs a leader of a state might incur if they fail to follow through on that state's international commitments. Particularly in democratic countries, audience costs will often reduce the likelihood of a country bluffing and increase the probability that a country will follow through on its commitments. The credibility of a state's commitment will affect their ability to coerce states into particular courses of action. According to Richard Lebeau, a credibility threat must include a formulated commitment to a course of action, a communication of that commitment to the other states involved, the capacity to follow through or make good on that commitment, and the willingness to take action to back that commitment up. So what does all of this have to do with the ongoing war in Ukraine? A couple of things. First, the audience cost suggests that both Russia and the United States are unlikely to back down from their previous commitments. Vladimir Putin would likely pay a high domestic political cost for appearing to lose the war in Ukraine, and would thus likely seek to frame even a Russian withdrawal as a victory. Similarly, Western public opinion appears to have coalesced around support of Volodymyr Zelensky's government in Ukraine, and moving away from that support would carry domestic political costs for Western governments as well. Second, while Russia's threat of unpredictable consequences for Western military support to Ukraine may represent a credible threat of escalation, from the perspective of the United States, the cost of not supporting Ukraine may be perceived to be even higher. It's therefore unlikely that the latest diplomatic memo will lead to a change in U.S. behavior. Given this, I'd expect the U.S. and its allies to continue their policy of supporting and arming Ukrainian forces. But what will be interesting to see, and something that I suspect Russia will be watching closely, is whether that military aid shifts in its form. So far, the vast majority of Western military assistance has been largely defensive in nature. For example, the man-portable air defense systems like the U.S. Stinger missile systems and the British Starstreak, the anti-tank guided missile systems like the U.S. Javelin or the British-Swedish NLAW. Ukraine has also made effective use of drones, including the Turkish TB2 and various smaller U.S.-manufactured drones. From the perspective of the United States, the continued transfer of such military equipment would not necessarily represent an escalation of the conflict in the same way that the transfer of heavier or more offensively focused systems like aircraft or tanks might. The weapons transferred so far might enable Ukraine to more effectively or efficiently defeat Russian forces in Ukraine, but they do relatively little to allow Ukraine to project military operations into Russian territory. Meanwhile, from the Ukrainian and Russian perspectives, negotiations are unlikely to reach agreement so long as neither party has a clear advantage. Rather, each side will likely seek to continue to try and push to gain the upper hand in military operations in Ukraine, believing that a stronger military position will enable them to push for peace terms that are more advantageous to them. That's it for now. If you found this helpful, click the thumbs up button and subscribe to catch future explainers as I release them. Please leave any questions you have about this video or any suggestions for future explainer topics in the comments section below. Thanks for watching, everyone.